Hi everyone, Bandana here, I hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to today's review of Men of War 2, the highly anticipated sequel to the original Men of War, and the games that have sort of come in between, which was Men of War Assault Squad 1 and 2, and Men of War Vietnam. The truth is, though we talk about the Men of War series, there were actually games that came before the first Men of War, and that was Soldiers, Heroes of World War II back in 2004, and then Faces of War a few years later. Do let me know down in the comments if you've played the old games, and indeed which one was your favourite and why. Like those games, Men of War 2 is sporting single-player campaigns, in fact a vast array of single-player content, including both story campaigns and progressive campaigns across a battle map, not to mention of course a wide array of multiplayer options. Without further ado, let's get into it. Many thanks to Way and Fulqrum Publishing for the game key so I could do this review. Normally here I would put a section on story, but the reality is this is just the story of World War II, as told from a few different perspectives if you go through the story campaigns. It includes both some story campaigns where you are following one character through those campaigns over 6 missions for each of the different factions, the Americans, the Russians and the Germans. Otherwise, there is also the option of a set of historical campaigns for the Americans and Russians with some additional side missions for the Germans rather than a full campaign. The good news is, all of those story campaigns, along with the historical campaigns, are fully voice actors, which is something I really appreciate because it really helps with immersion and it's nice not to have to read a huge chunk of text yourself. Okay, with that said, let's move on to the gameplay section. The game has a wide variety of game modes and I'd like to start with the single player if that's alright with everyone else. So, as I mentioned before, there are a variety of options for the campaigns. There is the single-player story-driven campaign, there are the historical campaigns and the special 6 additional missions for the Germans since they don't get their own historical campaign. Then you have the option of various progressive campaigns covering a battle map where you will visit various towns and you get a turn attacking and then a turn defending against the enemy, which will try and take positions back from you. Each one of these obviously leads to an on-map tactical battle. And then finally there is the option of another progressive campaign that is randomly generated, which you can follow through a path of your choice, which is basically a series of preset skirmish missions with a variety of objectives. And each time you complete one of these, you can reset it and get an entirely new generated series of missions. So in many ways there is an endless amount of content there. Other than the main story campaigns, you will be using the game's version of a deck called a battalion. These battalions come in a variety of forms. Some will be predetermined and you can't edit them for some missions. However, in other missions you will have ones that you are able to edit, and in fact in both the historical campaigns and the 2 types of progressive campaigns, you will get research points that allow you to unlock new technology and new units, which you can then add in to your existing battalions to help you progress. The other great news is, across the various campaigns, there are a variety of mission types, including full-on assault, defense, and also stealth missions. So there's a good amount of variety to keep you on your toes, and all of those attack and defense missions have various objectives as well, so it won't be the same attack and defense every time you play. The final bit of good news, and perhaps I've saved the best for last, is that all of the main 3 single-player campaigns can be played in multiplayer with other players. You simply set up a lobby, select missions, and then choose the title of the mission you want to play. You can play those with up to 4 other players. There is of course a standard skirmish option, or indeed playing co-op against the AI in multiplayer. Which leads me very nicely into the multiplayer section. There are a variety of game modes available here as well, including standard, battalion PvP, where you choose a battalion and can edit it with various other units, and you unlock more battalions as you play. There is also the classic mode, where you get access to everything available to that nation. And then finally there is Combined Arms, which is kind of a cross between the two, where you get a battalion of sorts, but you can put in any units you wish. And within these game modes there are various other sub-options, including tank-only mode, various attack and defense options, and also some very special maps, including a Christmas map that allows you to open presents, which will spawn new units on the battlefield, or indeed blow all your units up like it did to me. Regarding the gameplay itself, it's considered a tiny bit more arcadey perhaps than some of the very early games in the series, and I'm told in comparison to the Call of Arms Gates of Hell. Unfortunately, I've not played that myself, so I can't say for certain. And while tanks are the mainstay and extremely strong in the game, they are susceptible to infantry, aircraft, and artillery. And the truth is, artillery is beastly in this game. But if your enemy is lacking air defense and you're good with paratroopers, it's very easy to get some sneaky troopers round the back, which are nearly invisible, might I add, to take out any artillery. The game really does give you lots of different options for how you want to attack your enemy. Obviously, as ever, while keeping in mind you need to hold that front line. As with the previous games in the series, you can also manually control any unit you wish. And while the AI is pretty good at doing its job, this will really give you a boost in terms of accuracy and also making sure the unit is using the right weapon type for the job. During my gameplay, I found it particularly handy to manually control my big artillery pieces to make sure they were firing at what I wanted them to fire at, and also, maybe trying to predetermine where a vehicle was driving to. I have managed to play some multiplayer games, including some 5v5s with some other content creators and also some of the beta testers. In this situation, there were no cheesy tactics used. However, whether they still exist, I can't say for certain, and it will only be something that becomes apparent as we play the game more in multiplayer on release. The good news is, though, everything was pretty stable. The only issue that is ongoing, and this is both in multiplayer and single player, is that from time to time I notice the camera jumps a little bit further than how I was trying to move it. It seems as though the engine isn't quite keeping up at times. The game also has another issue, and I struggle to call it an issue because it doesn't really bother me, but I know it will bother some people, and that's that it is always online, even in the single player. The team are working on an offline version of the game so that you won't have to worry about that in the future. Over on the side of sound and graphics, I really appreciate that they've added voiceovers for the single player campaigns. The sounds overall are pretty fitting for World War II, and there is obviously a notable difference between different weapon types. I also quite like the background music. It's not too grating, though it can be quite loud at times. Graphically, the game looks quite nice, but it's not going to set the world on fire. There are in places textures which could certainly be a lot better these days, in my opinion. However, for the amount of units that are being fielded in these 5v5 multiplayer matches, I can understand why they haven't gone too overboard. In summary, the game is a welcome addition to the franchise, returning to those roots and having a proper set of single-player campaigns, both story-driven and these new additional ones with progressive aspects and research unlocks. For any fans of single-player RTS or real-time tactics, there is definitely a lot of content for you here. Over on the multiplayer side, there are certainly plenty of different options. I know some people aren't a huge fan of the fact that you are slightly limited in how much you can bring in at times, but obviously this keeps things a little bit more balanced and makes you have to think about what you're bringing in and why, as well of course coordinating with your teammates on what they're bringing in as well. I really do appreciate that the team have acknowledged the always online requirement and will be working on something to fix that, because I know that will be an issue for some players. In terms of pricing, the game will release today, 15th of May, at a price of £37.99, or indeed €44.99 or US dollars, depending on where you are in the world. In my opinion, I think that there is £40 worth of value in the single player alone if that's your thing, as the variety of options mean that there is plenty of replayability and easily over 40 hours of content there. Multiplayer on top of that is effectively just a bonus. Equally, if multiplayer is your thing and you're not going to touch the single player, well, you'll get out of it what you put into it, I suppose. If you really enjoy the multiplayer, then you're going to put the hours in to make it worthwhile. Giving the game a score at this stage, I would give it a respectable 4 out of 5. It still has some niggling issues, and the reality is, while it's a great addition to the franchise, it's not doing anything drastically new in terms of its overall gameplay. Please do let me know down in the comments if you've picked up the game and what you think of it so far. Is there something in particular you like or something that you don't like? Either way, thank you very much for joining me. As ever, please do like, share and subscribe. I'll see you all soon for some more reviews.
My butt is covered with grass from all the sitting around doing nothing.